computer. And we're good. Hello, welcome back. Remember, we are talking politics in Gotham. And before we get back into it, because boy, we sure are going to, this is the What Are You Wearing segment, which really only makes sense for the people who are watching the video. But Sam, what are you wearing?
Well, are we just doing like waist up? How's you feel about this?
Oh, whatever is applicable to this show.
Okay. Well, I'm in my Zoom shorts here because they're comfy, and
Yeah.
my 3-year-old goes, "Dad, your shirt matches your shorts." I said, "Yes, son. They're both black."
Oh
And then
man.
I'm wearing my Batman shirt of my favorite superhero, and also I think, other than my Counting Crows shirt that no longer fits me, my
Oh.
only article of pop culture clothing.
Awesome. Yeah. So what's I guess I should feel bad about it, but I don't really, is that with these now, I've just been asking guests, hey, can you wear something that is pop culture related? The other thing is I'm like, please don't swear. So I guess I curtail or censor them. But
Mm.
it's all worked out so far. And I've got my Batman Beyond hat that I've decided to wear. And then this shirt.
Oh, that's what it is.
Yeah, so they got Harley Quinn, Batgirl, and Poison Ivy from the Batman animated series shirt. Shout out to Josh Bertoni who got this as a gift for me. So
And
went with Batgirl. And then if you look at my background, my pop
oh,
figs, got 3 Batgirl pop figs there.
oh wow, this is a well arranged
I
little
know.
little view here.
This
Now,
is,
Poison Ivy's your favorite villain, is that right?
she is actually my favorite villain. There's that one,
Okay.
the Burnside version,
Okay.
and then the Yvonne Craig version.
Okay.
So there you go. So yeah, I try to switch up the backdrop every episode.
That's good. Keeping it fresh.
I like to think so. Well, friends, what's funny is we're already at the 2-hour mark. Though we did chat before.
Watch
Oh,
out.
I
It-
know. We did chat beforehand, but I just find it amusing that yeah, we certainly would not have met your benchmark of 12 p.m.
yes. I am glad I changed my standard.
Ah, the prima donna. Okay, so we are on essay number 4 that we are covering. And again, at the end of these, we'll give overall thoughts, or at least I will, my overall thoughts on this collection since it is a review copy. I'll let you know if it's worthwhile or not. So our 4th one is Fake News in Gotham City by Salvatore, I don't know, James Russo. So Sam, this was one, I mean, we both knew because of Carolyn that we were going to do Carolyn Coca, but
Mhm.
this was the one that you texted me and said, could we please do this one?
Yeah.
So yeah, what is the thesis on this guy? As if anyone could guess.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the most succinct title, and also it says exactly what it is. I mean, hashtag fake news in Gotham City.
Yeah.
He could have called it the fourth estate in Gotham City, because
Oh,
it's
interesting.
all about the media. What role does the media play within Gotham City? Is it mirror? Is it megaphone? Is it manipulator? Is it motor?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that the media does? And largely he looks at the media within Gotham City, and I don't know how consistent this is in the comics, but the GNN, the Gotham News Network, and others within it, he looks at it as being this thing that people gather around, like Roosevelt's fireside chats in the 30s, and that people genuinely in present day with GNN look to that for truth and to be informed. And because of that, it allows the Gotham world, its villains and its superheroes, to use media to do certain things. The writers can use it to advance plot, and the
Mm-hmm.
villains and the superheroes can use it to communicate, as well as push certain agendas of things that they want to do. And so the essay looks at what is the role of the media within Gotham City, especially considering that Batman is a superhero that does not have an official role in the media like Spider-Man or Superman does, as the essay makes as a
Mm-hmm.
point.
Yeah, absolutely. So this one, I mean, the other essay certainly turned into it, but I think we'll very much get out of the world of Batman to a certain extent and talk about our current world, with our opinions on and our standings with the news. So the other thing with this is that the Gothamites believe implicitly what the news has to say, even to their detriment. And Batman is really the one to tell them, however he tells them, what's wrong or what's dangerous. So my first question was, do Gothamites have the right idea? Believing implicitly in what they're watching? Should we hope for an ideal situation where we, as real actual people, trust the news implicitly? What do you think about this? Or is that a dangerous idea?
I think it's a dangerous idea to trust any kind of institution implicitly. So whether that's medicine or education or media or whatever that is, I mean, to put complete trust in any institution, since institutions are just made up of humans, at some point there's going to be fault. So there's got to be some way to sift through things. What to me is, it's interesting that everyone in Gotham looks at the news as the thing, and there's a lot to say there. But it's even more interesting to me that then Batman has to be the one to come in to be the one to sift through it. I mean, we already talked about who is above Batman, kind of helping check him. Who gives him the right to be the one to come in to be able to sift the fake news from the real news? So I would love to look to the news and to sit around and find a Walter Cronkite and just have this be the voice of America. But we just don't have that. But yet at the opposite end, I think America swung so far to the other side of that. Gotham is over here at implicit trust. America is over here at extreme suspicion, and news is insanely individualized. I mean, I was trying to think of what's the equivalent in 2020 America of everyone in Gotham sitting at their TV and watching it. And it's our phones. But yet we're not sitting at the phones all looking at a common source. We're looking at an individualized, self-curated news source, or not even a news source, but something that we've used as a substitute for a news source. I mean, maybe Trevor Noah are people's main access, just like with Jon Stewart, where a lot of people's main access to the news. So, but it's self-selected. So that is, I think, putting Gotham. And this is one instance where Gotham and the real world are at very, very different extremes from each other.
Do we have someone in our life that is like Batman? Is it Donald J? Is it Trump that's telling us, that's sifting through? Is it social media? Do we have someone that is telling us? I mean, Trump, this is all coming from Trump really telling us, fake news.
Right.
I mean, is he our version of Batman in real life? We just compared him to to Scarecrow, and now we're like, hey, he's the hero we've always needed.
So I wrote on the very last page of this essay, Trump assumes this role as arbiter of truth. And he does. He absolutely does. Except he views himself as, or at least he presents himself as, the sane one, and as the one who's able to get rid of all the fluff and distraction, all the fake news, and to be able to get real. One of the horrible meme I saw on Facebook, which unfortunately was at the top of my feed, which is all I see, was, Trump isn't here to care about your feelings. He's here to get the job done and to tell you the truth. And that's a lot of the perspective of him. So I think Trump, yes, absolutely assumes this role as a media mogul who is both the product of media. Trump would not exist without the media. Both pre-President Trump and President Trump, neither would exist without the media. And so he's able to use that. And it should have backfired by now. Like the trope should be recognized, but that's not where we are. And the reason why it hasn't worked, I think, is something to very much dig into and to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. This was actually one of the essays that I talked with my mom about when we were on a walk. The same time she questioned your qualifications, and I said
she didn't know them and questioned them. To be clear,
because she was born in 55, so she's seen obviously more than I have. And I was telling her about the data that was given, where they had I don't know what page it was on, but they had the different, I guess it's 187, about people were asked, to what extent they trust the media and things like that. And because she's living in the now, I said, was it like that when you were growing up? And she said, no, I can't really say that. And I asked, what news places do you trust most? And she said like PBS I totally trust. And then she said, she used the word legitimate because I pressed her and I was like, well, what do you mean by that? And then NPR is another place that that she trusts, or any national news like CBS or something that's balanced. And I said, well, isn't that Fox News's whole thing of fair and balanced? So that's really interesting. Whereas if I talk to other people, just, if media comes up, they always say like, I can only watch like 10 minutes of Fox News and then I watch 10 minutes of CNN. It's like this piecemeal stuff.
Mhm.
So it's just really interesting to see our world. You're right, how at opposite extremes of what Gotham is like for these people versus us, and like we can't really tell what's true and not true, and we have to sift through all the different media and stuff. It's
Right.
yeah. Whew.
They've got just the one option
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
Gotham News Network. Like
Yeah.
that's it for them, and that it seems like that's all they need.
Mm-hmm. Do you think we would be as aware of fake news if Donald Trump hadn't come along?
Do you mean the term? Do you mean the concept, or like the reality of fake news? How are you
It's
taking that term?
let's go with concept and reality, because it seems like from those numbers that people are always somewhat mistrustful, but now it's like really out there that he's telling people don't trust the media, and the media
Yeah.
is like, why are you doing this to us, basically? Do you think
Oh,
like without him we would still be mistrustful, but it wouldn't be to this degree?
yeah. Well, I think Donald Trump has brought up mistrust in two extremes. In one, he has created, not created, he has fostered a mistrust in news organizations by labeling certain things fake news, which, he misuses the term. For him, fake news is just bad press, and so
Yeah.
that, to him, that's fake news. And so I think that gives a lot of fodder for all of his followers and those that voted for him, then to be able to come along and say, oh, well, we're not going to trust the media, and we're going to say that they're pursuing a liberal agenda and all of that. So I think Trump has perpetuated that mistrust in the media over there. But then at the same time, because Trump is the most documented lying president in the history of our country, and that's every day it racks up more and more, and we can fact check until the end of time, and it's astonishing that the things that he'll say. Because of that, then the left over here goes, oh my goodness, I can't trust Trump as media representative because the things that he's saying, I cannot believe. So at both ends of the spectrum, Trump is at the center, and he's created this mistrust of his own people of news because Trump says, it's fake news. But then over here, you've got the media showing Trump, and the things that he speaks, the left says that they can't trust because Trump himself has shown himself as untrustworthy on multiple occasions. So like that hasn't happened before, like at least to this degree. I don't believe that there's any kind of new crisis that's nothing new happens. There's nothing new under the sun. We've heard the phrase, but yet there are things that are new by degree.
Mm-hmm.
I think Trump is certainly a new degree of this, and the hashtag fake news movement shows that. But I think it has an opposing effect on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I know. Oh man. My final question, because then I think you should take over on this one because you really wanted it. Throughout this essay, I was about to say she, but that was wishful thinking. He talks about, kind of goes through different establishments that people could trust in Gotham, but they do not. And so I just wondered, are they so trusting in media because they have no other ideologies that they can rely on, like religion, social organizations? Because I think he brings up bowling or something, like, some sort of club, a social club, things like that. Because they can't trust in those, is that like, well, yeah, this is the thing we're going to latch on to and trust in?
So on 185, he lists some of those other institutions: religious institutions, which you named, higher education, and political leaders. It's the start of the first full paragraph.
Yep.
And then you're right, it names other things and other groups or clubs. What does it say? Labor unions, fraternal orders, rugby teams, Freemasons, amateur sports clubs, that all build social cohesion. Like those aren't there. Or if they're there, they're not playing a role.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is just keeping this comic world of Gotham simple. We can't, we're not Tolkien here. And so we're not gonna, or maybe we could be, but it seems like it helps keep it more manageable to not delve into those institutions as much. And he talks about that sometimes the media, the author talks about this, that the media is just used as a way to advance the plot. And that sometimes that media as motor, I think it's in that section where the media is just there to help further something that's got to happen in the story. And a convenient, here it is, 188 at the top. News media remains a convenient means of exposition or vehicle for moving the story forward. All right, so yeah, part of it is there needs to be an institution that moves the story forward. And if we're going to pick one of them in a world where we've got a guy that dresses up as a bat, like what better one to really engage that than the media?
Yeah.
What strikes me as so interesting is that this media is so that the people of Gotham respond the way that they do to the media. Like, it doesn't surprise me that's the institution that's kind of focused on, but it surprises me of Gotham's reaction to that, because it's so different than what we live in now.
Mm-hmm.
We so KW and choose our own news sources now that's it's hard for me to imagine anyone sitting around any device, radio, television, or phone, and communally engaging a source that they look to as authoritative. I mean, I say that and I go to church, and that's exactly what we do.
Sure.
But yet outside of religion, most people are not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems atypical. And as soon as people do that, even within religion, people are like, oh, that's kind of cultish, and it's stigmatized.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of mass thought together.
But I feel like even with religion, well, we trust, and I guess I'll say trust. I was like, should it also be have faith in our church leadership? I think we're also called to think through the sermon. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm sure you would agree that there are times you may not have fully agreed with, a certain interpretation of the Bible. So even there, I think there's a bit of a difference too with religion in the real world versus the media in Gotham, and how much people just like, yeah, that must be right because it's right there on my boob tube.
Right. It's just it's such an extreme version. Yeah, the critical thinking just isn't there. And Batman has to come in, it seems, and do it for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have a friend named Michael Bailey who's a big Superman aficionado, so you want to get along with him. But he says, he mentions like the talking heads of exposition or things like that. And it very much comes into play. I think you read Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Rises or Dark Knight Returns. So it's not, where
Mm-hmm.
they have always that media pops up and Lana Lang and having the discussions and everything. So I always think about that. But yeah, you go with what you were about to say.
So in your question, were you asking, is there a commentary on certain institutions by the fact that media is the one that they focus on and that others are not looked at as trustworthy?
I think partially that, as well as because they don't really believe in or hold on to or are a member of anything, inevitably does something have to fill the void. And so it just happens to be media. Like, if these people were more religiously minded, would then they be able to sift more critically through what the media has to say in their world?
I hope so.
Or even, social organizations, or you said political leaders.
I hope the prominence of multiple institutions in a society leads to more critical thinking. And it definitely seems like the mono institution of media within Gotham really dumbs down the groupthink that is there. And so they need to diversify the importance of their institutions. But also, I mean, the people of Gotham largely are members of Gotham. And that's kind of it. You're not a member of a club, a religion, a group, a party, even. Like, you are a member of this city. And what institution out there could unite a city as much as the media? It couldn't be religion because not everybody believes it. It couldn't be higher education because not everybody goes to school. It's the media. It's something that everybody, from kid to person who is an old shut-in, they're able to engage the media because they can sit in front of the TV. And so it's this ubiquitously accessible institution. So it's brilliant as a choice if we're going to pick one within the Gotham world to do all these things of manipulator and motor and mirror that the essay talks about. Like, the media is best able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it just fascinates me that Gotham's reaction is just like complete supplication
to it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And was it also this essay that mentions how all the politicians, like they don't last very long, or was that another one? Just like
No,
mayors aren't really named and they
yep,
die quickly and
yeah.
all of that stuff. Yeah.
In the Batman movies, was it in like original Tim Burton Batman? It was like I think it like named the mayor, and then later on it was
Yeah.
unnamed. Like
Yep.
it gets increasingly nebulous, these
Mm-hmm.
figures. I mean, the political figure that we see, I think, having the most influence is Harvey Dent. And look what happens to him.
Right.
So
Yeah.
again, politics is not this institution that's or that's a big authority
Mm-hmm.
within this Gotham world. It's the media. But it's just so interesting though that the media can kind of be whatever you want. I mean, religion as an institution is largely looked at as conservative. Higher education or academia is largely looked at as pretty liberal. But yet media is this tabula rasa that you can paint whatever you want on. And the author makes that point that it is a plot device, but it's also the one that's most fitting to be able to do all of these other things. It's the most manipulable.
Yeah.
If that's a word.
I guess it's just, I mean, it's just facts without any sort of commentary on it. So, like, has no political alignment at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or there is the commentary, because they certainly give, I guess the media gives their thoughts on Batman and all the things that are going on, but it is, I think you're really wise to point out, it's like this apolitical zone, right? I mean, like political parties seem to play no role within Gotham. All that's there are like superheroes and villains and the people of Gotham.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that's what we need for the stories as they play out, but that doesn't represent, there's not such a herd mentality with media within the United States, at least not anymore. And maybe there never really was with Walter Cronkite and Edward R. Murrow and all the others. Maybe not. So I want to ask you on
Please.
183, on the second full paragraph, it talks about the Gotham Cathedral. I would love to hear about that. Like what role does the Gotham Cathedral play? And it mentions two things I remember. One was in Tim Burton's Batman. It's the scene of the epic fight, and Kim Basinger is there and doing her piercing scream, and Joker are fighting there, and it's this big fight. It's interesting to me that in The Dark Knight, that Batman and Joker have their epic fight together, not at a cathedral, but at an office building.
Yeah.
So that's almost a replacement of the cathedral. And then it mentions in one of the other comics that the Gothic Cathedral becomes like a hideout for criminals and their materials. So what role does Gotham Cathedral play other than it used to be something and now it's not?
Yeah. And I like how it says in Tim Burton's Batman, it's left to serve as atmospheric ruin porn. I liked that phrase there.
Great phrase.
Oh man, it's been a while since I've read something that I could like concretely talk about, because there's like Batman the Cult, so there are some like religious things. The last time I remember something taking place in a church was during No Man's Land, where they're basically helping usher people from outside, so it's like a safe haven. But that ends up going awry. Like there's a bad priest in there, if I remember correctly. It's been a year or two since I've read it. So you've got religious members, you kind of have the good one, and then like of course you have the bad one. And it seems like it's serving the purpose of bringing the community in and protecting them, but then it does have a dark. That must have been where they may have been storing the weapons, and then Penguin was using it. I can't remember the details.
Okay.
So there it is. Yeah. So it's not, I mean, besides being a place maybe that Batman drives by, there haven't been too many stories that focus on it.
Okay. Does religion, I mean, not just the cathedral, but does religion come up at any other point? I mean, is it The Dark Knight Rises that ends with Batman like in the underground with this new group of youngins who are going to rise up and follow him?
Oh, the mutants.
Or is that The Dark Knight
Returns, right? Are you talking about
Yes.
Yeah. The mutants turn into
Dark,
the
Dark Knight Returns, right?
I don't remember what they are. Yeah.
He gets them on their side. I mean, that to a degree, like there's a religious element to that because there's such an allegiance that they have to him, but it's not explicitly religious.
Yeah. And then, there's a character, I shouldn't say, there is a character named Huntress, and Catholicism is a big part of her life, and she wears a cross and everything. But, it's one of those characters that she's not dealt with as well, compared to like Daredevil, where Catholicism really is woven in with his past. Not I feel like it's a character by character basis, and any religious stories I think were more like a negative, like the cult, or it's like Father Black something. These people are they're bat splainers out there, and they're gonna be yelling at me, but that's why I have a Batgirl podcast and not a Batman podcast. Yeah, so I feel like not many stories deal with it, and it's a character by character basis to see what their actual belief systems are. Like Barbara Gordon, I don't really feel like she has any sort of religious belief system as far as I have seen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, on 185, he talks about how I mentioned this a little bit, that Superman is a reporter, Spider-Man is a photographer, and so they've got a certain ability to influence the news because they're part of the media and they're part of the story. But then he says, Batman, however, has no pull with the mass media in the role of a sympathetic friend working for the press, much less full-time employment at a media outlet. Instead, when Batman wishes to get better coverage, he generally must get a little more hands-on. And I love that Batman, in order to engage the media, he has to become the story. He can't manipulate it or put the camera where he wants or write the article that he wants, like Clark Kent and Spider-Man are able, or Peter Parker are able to. He himself has to become the story, which yet again goes back to why he's my favorite. Like he's not self-made in the sense like he came from nothing, because he was handed a lot of things, but yet he's self-made in the sense he took those tools and he became something without the advantage of a superpower, even without the superpower of being within the media.
How would you say, oh, sorry, you go ahead.
No, that's all.
Oh, okay. How would you say he as Batman compares to he as Bruce Wayne in getting that coverage and how he uses it?
It seems like Bruce Wayne uses that coverage more just as a convenient cover. Bruce Wayne needs to be Bruce Wayne and presented a certain way so that Bruce Wayne is able to be Batman. And it seems like some of the ways that Batman really uses the media is, and the essay mentions this, is as a communicator to other people, even like specifically to the Joker. So for Bruce Wayne, it's a cover, and for Batman, it seems like it's more of a communicator.
And then how would you, with the villains, because everyone wholeheartedly believes the media, does that make villains who use it even more dangerous? Would you say? So I'm thinking of even Joker. Joker in The Dark Knight, he thoroughly uses it to the extent that people were ready to kill the numbers cruncher because he knew because Joker said, kill him or I'll blow up a hospital.
Right. And in Tim Burton's Batman with the creepy commercial where that he's laced all these products with his whatever that'll kill you with a smile. So yeah, Joker effectively uses it. You see, by having media as this primary institution, and by it being as important as it is to the people of Gotham, it lends itself to be hijacked, but it also lends itself to being used well. And I'm sure there are examples of Batman not using it well, but because it's such a big deal in people's lives, it's able to be used by both the good and the bad for great good or great ill. You mentioned earlier how you get upset when people pick a verse out of the Bible, and you can make it you can have it justify anything. You can have the Bible justify anything or any view that you want, but that doesn't mean that you are faithful to the interpretation. And so I would say same thing with the media. Just because you're using it and it's defending something or articulating something doesn't mean you're actually faithful to that institution, what its job is, which is to inform the people, to create an informed citizenry. And I think of like the HBO show, The Newsroom, and how those people were obsessed, not with a certain political view, because the main character was a Republican and everyone around him was a liberal Democrat, but yet they could come together around the newsroom because they fought for the common cause of creating an informed citizenry. And the media within Gotham literally seems like it's doing the opposite of that. It's creating a herd mentality so that it can be left up to the devices of whoever happens to need it, whether that be Batman or Joker. So they both kind of abuse it.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. One of my favorite episodes of Justice League, the animated series, was Wild Cards, and he uses the media to basically not brainwash, but what's it called? Hypnotize all the viewers and things like that. So now I'm starting to rethink all of these instances. I did text my friend I said, quick, when is Gotham Cathedral or religion used in Batman? Donovan said the cult, which I mentioned, involves Deacon Blackfire as a bad guy. Oh, so that was his name. And Blackfire. Then Batman says he's not spiritual in whatever happened to the Caped Crusader.
But that doesn't. But spiritual and religious are different things. UVA did a class 10 years ago called "Spiritual but Not Religious."
Interesting.
So maybe there's still room for Batman to believe in something else.
Well, justice, I suppose.
Yeah, right. That's true. But it's justice based off of, as we said, this nebulous idea that he seems to only base off of his own notion of what it is or what Alfred is able to bully him into.
Yeah.
It's still not objective or rooted in a text.
Yeah. I think if I were to think externally, I feel like not many comics deal too much with religion because I think there's just this discomfort with it, both for the readership as well as the writers. And it's always this sort of polar idea of, is it satire and we make fun of it, or it's like really bad, or if we're going the good route, does it mean that we're talking down to people and trying to get them to see the way? So I think they kind of steer clear. So that's why I can kind of see Gotham not really having that center focus point. Because as we've seen, Deacon Blackfire, and then some bad stuff happening during No Man's Land, that's not. And then Huntress, even though she's Catholic, does kill people. So she's a school teacher too. Which is funny. I don't know how she gets the days off that she does to fight, but she sure does.
Maybe it's just in the summers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in some sense, it's really unfortunate that the Batman world hasn't engaged that institution of religion, because as we'll see in the next and last essay that we'll talk about, like, it's engaged so many deep and nuanced issues. I mean, even matters of ability and disability, and even that is hard to talk through.
Yeah.
But yet it's not engaged this thing, or it's engaged it as making fun of it, or kind of demonizing religion or those that follow it, which are typically the two ways that pop culture engages religion. It's so incredibly rare that there is a nuanced engagement within religion. Because to your point, it's hard and it makes people uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Oh man.
So
do you think
he what?
I was just gonna say, do you think we'll ever trust media again?
Well,
did we ask this question? I can't remember.
Did we ever? I mean, just because,
according to those numbers, not very much.
Well, just because, back in the day, a lot of people used to watch a lot more nightly news, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they trusted it. And I feel like maybe if we polled people of how do people engage news outlets more now or in 1950, it'd be way more now, just because there's more options. I mean, I don't know that, but I would assume, like, the fact that I can engage 15 sources of news on my phone within 60 seconds, like,
Yeah.
it seems like there would be more news engagement, but that doesn't mean that people are discriminating better. And it doesn't mean that the news is that much better. It just means that there's that much more to sift through. And it just means that we've got to invent terms to classify certain things like fake news, which interestingly, he doesn't mention until page 189. Almost the last, actually, it is the last paragraph. I think that's the first time that he actually mentions it. The as realistic as newer paragraph and about 6 lines down. He says, even when the news being provided is fake news, such as that dished out by Media Man, Gothamites still go to Media Man for their information. Because you're supposed to be able to go to your media to get the news rather than to go to other competing sources of information. So like, even when they're shown, it's not reliable. And again, it's not unfair to make a parallel here to Trump, because like, again, he could have called this essay The Fourth Estate in Gotham City. He called it #fake news, very much to situate it within our time. Like, how much untruth does someone have to speak in order for that person to be largely mistrusted? And if we're talking about our president, we have not yet met that moment, which is absolutely baffling that's the case. And if that's the case, that Trump has uttered, as the numbers show us, more lies than we thought humanly possible, or things that are not factually verifiable.
Sure.
Let me put it that way. Than any president we've ever had, and yet we still have numbers that are really consistent. That reveals something. That to me makes the Gothamites trust in media. Even when Media Man shows them they shouldn't have it, that makes me see more of a parallel between Gothamites and Americans than I really want to see.
And I think it connects to the scarecrow situation as well, and that, what are we seeing? Well, we're seeing ourselves, because this was something I think I talked with my mom about as well, that he's saying these outrageous things and, lies that can be proven as untruths, but he's saying things that certain people want to hear and have waited for hearing, and so I think they latch onto it, and I feel like that's the reason why, even though we're baffled.
Exactly. And you have people prioritizing a desire and an affirmation and an identity over truth. And it's at this point, 4 years in, it's undeniable that that's what's happening. And that's really scary. So then you have to figure out, how do you engage a people, and how do you engage in a dialogue in the public square where the rules are not truth? The founding fathers would freak out at this world where truth is just an ancillary priority to things right now.
Do you think Gotham, oh, I keep cutting you off, sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you think Gotham would look different if there were several media outlets, or people did challenge what they were thinking or viewing, I guess?
I think so. I think that Gotham wouldn't be thought of as this this ubiquitous thing, and Gothamites as this like collective group of sheep as much, if there were multiple outlets and more critical thinking. I mean, because if as soon as we talk about Americans as a group, I mean, we can say certain things are true, but so far as how they approach the media, we can't say that there's an American view of media, because there's so many different approaches to it. But in Gotham, it's one thing. There's one view, and that view is to trust it. He says at the bottom of 189, after he says fake news, almost at the bottom of the page, he says, we can even tailor our media consumption habits in accordance with which ideological filter we want used to spin the day's events, or which version of reality we want presented to us. Which is it's a great, almost poetic description of what I was saying earlier, of our phones are the self-selected source where we can choose what it is to feed whatever bias or view that we have. What's scary though is that we often, at least I hope it's done unknowingly. Like, it'd really scare me, if we're doing this and we're aware that I'm just feeding this view because it's something that I want. But I think that a lot of that's done unknowingly. What's shocking to me though is, and again, Trump's the example, when the curtain is pulled back and we see things as they really are, and we see truth as being not a priority, and yet still there's a fervor and a following. That's when I get very scared and wonder what will happen with the next election.
Yeah. I think of, I mean, hopefully this is a connection and it's not you can tell me if I'm like way off, but I had a discussion recently with Donovan just about celebrity and celebrity status and how we latch on to certain people. And he asked me, have you ever been let down by a celebrity? Because it's
Mhm.
true that sometimes they like, I think about Kanye, that he has such a following and he does kind of crazy stuff that I don't really understand. And I say no, I've never been let down by anyone because I don't like wholeheartedly latch on to them and whatever they say is like gospel and everything because I can kind of pick and choose what I feel like. But I feel like Trump has that sort of celebrity status
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
I this guy, whatever he does, yeah, I'm all on board for. And some people I think are able to sort of swim, which I don't understand, but they're able to swim and be like, I don't know, I disagree with some things, but I'm still going to vote for him. But then there are others that are the scary, like whatever he says, that's got to be the gospel truth for sure.
Right. And those scare me more than any others because those are very much like the Gothamites of it shows that it takes more than just presenting hard facts for people often to change their mind or for people's hearts to be turned. I can't just give a history. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I can teach what the lost cause narrative is to my students as much as I want and show them like, oh my goodness, like this was narrative was constructed for you as a Southerner to believe. And yet still the kids are going to come out and some of them are still going to hold to that. So it's not just hard facts. And that's not, so it's not like the media, if they just started spouting all that was true, that's just going to magically do it. There's more to it that needs to happen there. So the end of the essay, it ends on quite a high note. He ends and says there towards the top, the news in Gotham City and the news is sometimes fake news being used to manipulate the citizenry. Fortunately, the somewhat gormless or slow-witted, because I had to look that up to make sure what that meant, Gothamites, the alliteration is great, but I needed to know what it meant. They have Batman to correctly decide for them what is and is not fake news, and then to stop the flow of fake news. In today's climate of mistrust of the mass media, perhaps it is the function of Batman we most desire, and this is it is this function of Batman we most desire in the real world. I said earlier that the media created Trump, and they did. And the media, even though media shows all the crazy things that he says and does, it still maintains Trump. But Trump has assumed this role, as I said earlier, of the arbiter of truth. And he has assumed this posture of, I'm the one who's going to tell you the way it really is. And I'm the one who's going to be able to sift through all the fake news and all of the cultural Marxism that's coming in and trying to destroy me. And I'm going to be able to shoot straight with you. And I think because Trump takes that kind of posture, it baptizes anything after that point that he says. I think people so want someone to come in and to be their guide and to be their savior, to show them the way the world that it really is, that they're willing to set aside some other things like truth in order to gain this bonus of having someone help them navigate the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so Trump has moved himself into that position. I mean, Trump does what Jefferson did to the Bible. Jefferson historically chopped it up and took out the parts that he didn't
Yep.
want there. And we see Trump doing that with the world and then representing it in this way. But I think what appeals to people is, at least I hope, it's not actually the things that Trump does. And it's not actually the things that he pursues, because so many of those things are wretched. It's the attitude or the posture that he takes. This identity that he's created, this assertiveness that he has. People want that. I mean, we can say whatever we want to about Obama, but so much of what characterized his public persona was an empathy and a humility. And that doesn't mean he always used it well, but that was part of his character and his public engagement. And that's largely absent with Trump. And so I really do think people so deep down want a savior and want someone to function as their God. And Trump gladly assumes that role as leader. And what he leads them to is, we can talk about that later, but he's leading. At least he's taken us in a direction.
So you heard it here first, folks. Batman is Donald Trump.
No, No.
Trump is
Trump is
Batman.
Scarecrow. Let's do on that one.
Ay, ay, ay.
There is an overlap with what the essay seems to be saying of Batman does assume that role as the one who's able to help guide people through. But the difference between Batman as media guide and truth guide and Trump as media guide and truth guide is that Batman has predictable and consistent principles that he operates on. Trump does not. Again, I think Trump's big desire is that he does not want to be dominated and therefore wants to dominate. That can manifest itself in tons of ways. So Batman as kind of media messiah, he at least is predictable in what it is that he's going to do.
Yeah. I've fallen off of modern day Batman, so I can't really speak to this, but I wonder how, if at all, social media has been brought into, because these examples really are more TV, I would say, TV and newspaper. But social media has such a strong sway, and I think that has pushed things more quickly than they would have on their own trajectory. So yeah, I'm not sure how.
Yeah, I wonder if people are pulling out their phones and texting. You know, I love how shows like Sherlock or House of Cards incorporate, you know, on-screen texts as part of what drives the plot. And yeah, I wonder if modern Batman does that. But then again, my guess is it doesn't, because Gotham is almost like this city that's trapped in this time warp where everything is kind of like, in some sense, like pseudo 1980s-ish, where like your TV is your primary hook to the world, and that to update it too much would lose some of what makes historical Gotham.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know.
I know Barbara Gordon did in the Burnside run, which I don't think I could give you years on that one, but she used social media more than that. And it was more of like a character defining thing because they were trying to make her a bit more youthful. So, you know, she took selfies and things like that and talked about her city, but she was outside of Gotham at that time. She was in this sort of niche indie kind of yuppie area or township, I guess, called Burnside. So it kind of matched with her character at that point in time.
Okay.
Whew. Anything else on this one that you really wanted?
No, I'm glad we did it. I mean, like you said before, the essay before really was a segue into this.
Yeah.
I think both of those essays, the last two, are not so veiled commentaries on Trump and modern political discourse.
Yeah.
And that's important.
Yeah. And I would say, yeah. So, I mean, if people haven't hung up, stopped, you know, whatever you're going to do with any of this stuff, you know, thinking that these are all liberal agenda essays, I would say that they are not. I don't think any of them really pushing it. I mean, they really are just treating facts. Like, this is how things are happening right now. And then, so you got these current event ones, and then you also have ones that are dead white philosophers, as Carolyn said too. So in case you are worried about picking this book up because you feel like it's pushing some liberal agenda, I would say that it is not. So I guess we're moving on to the final one.
Grand finale.
Friend of the podcast, friend of mine, Carolyn Coca. She has written Batgirls and the Politics of Feminism in Gotham. So would you like to, as a mansplainer, there's my third and final insult. Would you like to summarize this thesis?
I was waiting for it. Well, then let me not mansplain. Let me just quote. I think she gives her best thesis at the end. So page 210, the last paragraph, and it spills over to 211. She says, each Batgirl has been a product of the successes and limits of the feminist movements at the time of her creation, the intent of writers and artists and editors at a profit-oriented company mindful of both feminist ideas and backlash to them, and varying receptions and sometimes pushback by the readers. So in a sense, Batgirl is presenting this essay as, I mean, the shaping show thing is totally here. Batgirl at times has shown and reflected the feminist movement and culture, and at times Batgirl has been meant to shape it. And it largely depends on the editor's whims. And I want to talk about that because so much happens at the desire of the editors. that it goes back and forth between, is Batgirl showing us who we are in our culture, or is Batgirl at the acting as a vanguard and helping shape it? And this essay chronicles that over first, second, and third wave feminism.
So without, I will say you texted me, what did you have to say about this particular essay that I did not prompt you to say at all?
I said that it was the deepest, the most fleshed out, and also had the best subtitles, I think, within of all of the others. I also feel like this was the one that was the least stretching of, I want to bring our world into the Batman universe, and I want to see what's going on. This was such a believable chronicle of that shaping show dynamic, and I'm at a loss to think of any other character in the Batman universe that shows this as well as Batgirl.
Yeah. I'm sorry that she didn't. I'm pretty sure that the essay that she sent me to like look over and things and read for the first time had images, so I was bummed that they took the
Oh,
images out and they just
yeah,
have Nolan images and throughout. But anyways,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so let's go off of what you had just said, not the praise, though I always say hashtag Carolyn knows, because she certainly does. To what extent do you think comics, graphic novels, even literature should react to current trends, and to what extent should they push ideas forward? Perhaps we've covered this, but now that I feel like this really talks about it, that's a reaction to some stuff that's happening. It's trying to push stuff forward as well. I mean, what's the balance there?
Mm. I think the best art does both, but it doesn't have to be balanced. And I think that any piece of art, I hope, is wanting to push and to challenge or to shape in a certain way. There's some authorial intent behind it, but there's also an openness of what that could be. The artist might want you to be shaped, but not maybe in a specific way. But there's still a desire for something to happen. And then there's also this desire of it wanting to show and reflect something, like there's a statement that's there. So I think that art does it best when it's both, but depending on what that piece of art is, those proportions might change. And the fascinating thing about Batgirl is that you can go throughout all of this time that it covers from 1961 through present day, and you see that ebbing and flowing. Sometimes it's pushing the envelope, and sometimes it's just reflecting where people are, and it goes back and forth and back and forth. And so Batgirl is this character that's often used, unfortunately, at sometimes like as a repository of what at that moment the editors felt they needed to do, whether that be to fulfill a certain agenda, whether that be to cater to certain individuals' desires, whatever it is. But it seems like Batgirl was just this, I said the phrase earlier, but was almost this tabula rasa, so that whatever needed to be painted on her could be painted on her.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, in the time that it seems like that happened the least was when she becomes the Oracle. I mean, like, how much does that just blow apart expectations to have a woman with a disability in that position of intelligence and power and her maternal nature? Because the essay Carolyn talks, or maybe Miss Coco, because I don't know her. But
The professor.
the professor, when she talks about breaking that stereotype of those that have a disability not being able to care for others, and yet you see Oracle owning it and doing it. So the Oracle manifestation of Batgirl seems as the one that just like did like the thing that I was most excited about, and then the editors take it away, which helped me understand that, Stella, because that I didn't know about that until here, because they rewrite it and they're we're done with and I'm quoting her at this point, we're done with the super crip, and now we're rolling things back.
Yeah.
And that was upsetting.
I don't know if I can make you understand it, but it's interesting because her subtitle on that one was Batgirl the Oracle, from Batgirl the Oracle, and it's really like, well, from Batgirl the Oracle back to Batgirl again.
Yep. Yeah.
Which there was certainly a fan outcry over that as well, because you're losing this staple and also one of the few disabled characters that people could relate to. Yeah, it's been a while since, I guess it was 2011 or 2012, since all of that stuff happened with the New 52, where basically they washed everything, all continuity clean, and started fresh and everything. So I think they wanted to, number one, have the, I think, most recognizable Batgirl as Barbara Gordon, because up to that point you had Stephanie Brown, and I guess they just wanted her as Batgirl. They kind of wanted everything really easy, and I think at that time Batman had like this idealized 5-year timeline, and so it just wouldn't have made sense for her to go through all of her history in that little bubble. So they felt like she's got to be Batgirl. Later on, it's written in that, yes, Joker was a part of it, and she's got some sort of chip that without
Oh,
it, she wouldn't be able to walk. So
no,
you're like kind of giving it back in there. But I personally find the chip a bit offensive just because it's like, does that technology actually exist? What does that say about, you know, you
right,
can't just have her be disabled. You like,
right.
yeah, kind of, you're giving it, but yeah. And
That's
it shorts out a lot, which is kind of annoying in recent years. But yeah, it was unfortunate. I think to a certain extent, it was just like simplification. Like, let's just keep it simple. And Batgirl is Barbara Gordon, and she can walk, and everything is good again.
which is so sad because one of the most, it seems, nuanced pieces of the Batman universe was that happened to her and that she became Oracle. Like that's such a unique part of her story. And the chip, oh, that's such a plot device to get something that they see as inconvenient. That's so not.
Yeah, it's funny because someone it recently came up again. Unfortunately, it shorted out recently, and someone had tagged me in something on Facebook. Oh, because I said about my rage quit on this issue, and then someone said, "Oh, about the magical chip thing," and then someone below said, "What magical chip?" And I was like, "Boy, are you out of touch, not knowing what the magical chip is." But yeah, I mean, even with or before Kim Yale and John Ostrander came along, who really created and crafted that Oracle character, Barbara was just going to be like disheveled in a garbage heap of editorial trash. And people didn't really respect her. I think the quote from Len Wein, which I guess he was editor at the time, you know, with the Killing Joke, when um, he was asked, you know, could I do this to Barbara Gordon? I think the quote is, yeah, cripple the bitch. So, I mean, she was like, not well. I mean, what? And
And
then
then
you,
he was fridged.
yeah. So, and then Kim Yale and
Mm.
Ostrander came along and, yeah, made her, in my opinion, and I know it's biased, one of the most important comic characters, not only because of what she represents, but she's got her hands and her fingers across the DC universe and is helping out all sorts of people, not just in Gotham City and everything. So she just becomes this like huge, great idea. And yeah, the funny thing is, which I'm glad Carolyn brought up, is that when people try to find out who Oracle is, they inevitably assume, oh, Oracle's gotta be a guy, which is, you know, like, oh man.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah.
which is a great reversal, sort of like the end of Naomi Alderman's The Power. Uh,
No.
at the end of the book, remember the editor says, you know, maybe you would like to consider publishing this under, and she subverts the
Yeah.
norm, because the norm would be, you know, publish under the name of a man so that you get legitimacy, but there it's maybe you as a man would want to consider publishing this under the name of a woman. Like it subverts that,
Yeah. Absolutely.
but no more. Mm.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. Her current run is ending at 50, but they haven't really treated her well, which goes into the editorial. I mean, we can talk a bit about that. I can talk to you as much as I am able to on what their reasons are for it. But yeah, so I don't know what they're going to do with that. So as far as I know, I mean, editorial.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Like these editors are spoken of like the fates, you know, controlling everything. I mean,
Yeah.
who is it that controls the fate of Batgirl? Because like are artists and writers just hired and colorists just to fulfill the whims of the editor? Because at multiple points it was like the editors decided.
Yeah, I mean, that's really how it is, and it's really come into play even more recently. I am saying, I'm so sorry, Leslie, wherever you are. Yeah, so there would be like the head honcho of DC offices, and then you have different head honchos of like the minor ones, like the bad offices, etc. Unfortunately, and it's becoming clear quite recently, that Batgirl is basically, even the writer of Batgirl is at the whim of whatever the rest of the Batman universe is doing.
Mhm.
So a writer had recently come out. She finished her run, I guess, around this time last year, and she said that she walked into another creator at the airport by accident and found out that there was going to be a bat summit, and she was not invited, and she was writing Batgirl at the time. And that's
Mm.
not the first, or it wasn't the last time that that happened. She had written storylines and was asked to change them because it wasn't fitting in with the flow of what, whatever Batman, I guess, and those storylines were doing. So unfortunately, yes, there's not much agency, it seems like, with the writer, and it probably really depends upon the writer as well, because she was a woman.
Mm.
Whereas there are some writers like Scott Snyder, that's who wrote the Black Mirror that you read, who could probably, really push back on certain things. So unfortunately, yeah, if someone tells you to do something, you're going to have to do it. And that is, with some of the characters like Batgirl, who might not be like first tier or A-level character, I think she just has to go where the storyline fits, or if something's happening in Gotham, it's going to affect her, and she can't
Wow.
be outside of that bubble. So when Carolyn is saying about the editors, I mean, that's honestly, yeah,
Okay.
what's happening there. So I'm so thankful that Ostrander and Yale were able to do what they got done, and I guess the editor allowed that to happen, because I feel like if we were to try that now, it would not happen.
Mm.
So it came at, I think, the perfect time for Oracle to be birthed.
Hmm. Okay. Well, I mean, you didn't say this, but I feel like you hinted at this, and Carolyn hints at this. So often, Batgirl is in relation to what's happening with the male characters. And I mean, it sounds like her very fate with the editors is in relation to largely what's happening with the male characters, and even her costume. Like, I'm looking at 197 with Betty, and the costumes, colors, and designs position her as a female version of Robin.
Mm-hmm.
Her name positions her as a young female version of Batman. She's even got a crime compact with lipstick and wires to catch criminals. I mean, she's in reference to the males,
Yeah.
even within the very things that are put on her body.
Yep.
And Carolyn even talks about that Batman, Batwoman, Robin, and Batgirl as a family unit with Batman as the patriarchal head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, she's technically what you would consider a derivative character, since you have Batman and she's just coming off of Batman. And I try to fight against it. I mean, literally she is. But I feel with Barbara Gordon, at least, because I mean, Bat Dash Girl, Bet or Betty, very much does fall in line with that. But with
Mhm.
Barbara, I like to think of her as crafting her own and carving her own place in history. And it really depends on the writers, because some writers like to think that she had a crush on Batman, and so she modeled it after that. Whereas originally it wasn't like that. She was trying to poke fun at her father, and then it turned in. And you read Batgirl Year One, and I think she takes more ownership of her
Yeah.
costume and her,
Yes.
yeah,
So is Bat Dash Girl specifically Betty?
yes,
And is Batgirl does Batgirl no dash, is that all the other
with no dash or
no
the other
dash?
ones. Yeah, I'm trying to.
Okay.
Oh, I just looked up Bat Dash Girl, and they're like, "Did you mean Batgirl?" I want to show you what Betty looked like if I can.
Oh yeah. Yeah, let me see.
Um,
That's so I also want to ask this or
yep.
pose this to you. So we were on 197 and the Bat family unit, and her costume is directly in reference to Robin, and she's a younger female version of Batman. Oh wow. Literally like I Love Lucy with a cape.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she had a compact, but Barbara originally had a purse on the side
Right. It was
that was
stripped on
red. I don't know if I can find an image of that.
I
So
was
I
that
mean,
was on the cover of Batgirl Year One, right?
I don't know that she had one on Batgirl Year One.
Oh, we got to find that out.
Uh-oh.
I thought I could see a little. Well, yeah. Now we got to know.
I guess so. See, this is what oh well, I looked up red purse and it's like I'm shopping. I'm not
Yeah,
shopping.
my pastor invented a word for what we're doing right now. Did you know this? Googlenating. The
What does it mean?
the act of Googling during a conversation.
Oh.
You need to tell me what the Latin root is of that, because I assume there's one but don't know. But gugamating, he wants it to be a word, so
Mating.
we need to help
Interesting.
me get it out there in culture, please.
Well, it's
To gugamate, to be a gugamator, to and gugamating. Those are some variations.
so here's her first appearance. You can see the purse.
Yeah. Okay.
So now I need to look up Batgirl Year
Batgirl
One.
Year One. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that Chuck Dixon did not allow that to happen.
Which I would so much rather it not be there, but I
Yeah.
really want to know, because I remember the cover. It was all the pink and red, and it was the first time I think she jumped with the wire that was not strong enough to hold her,
Oh yeah.
and she
No,
was
it just shows her.
good. Okay,
Yeah.
good. You
Because
know,
that he
good
kind of took
job,
that away.
Batgirl Year One. Okay,
Yeah.
so
I mean,
here's
yeah. I
good.
remember she has costume difficulties in that. Like her mask was, I think, pulled down, but not like some of the stuff that I could show you. Yeah, with the run in the tights and the perp
Oh,
saying, "Get a load of those gams."
which I want to talk about the tights thing, but not yet. So, but
Yeah.
my question is from 197.
Uh,
If Batgirl and Batwoman and even Robin are all
mm,
in reference to Batman,
yeah.
are all superheroes in reference to Superman?
Oh,
I mean,
interesting.
he is indeed a Superman, and I mean, is Batman a derivative character of Superman?
That's a good question. Yeah, I'm not sure. So you're just saying like he'd be kind of like the
Yeah,
proto suit,
not
and then they
not in the
all kind
sense,
of like,
right? Not in
yeah.
the sense like, they're his bastard children. Or,
No, I understand kind of like language where there's the mother language and then it
yeah,
start to,
yeah.
yeah, to
Is
filter
he the
down.
Latin of the Romance language superhero world?
Yeah. I don't it's hard. Ooh, I don't know. That's hard for me to say cuz I feel like Batman and Superman are just so different.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess just the idea though of this ultimate person, which
Yeah.
is a white male. So
The
there's that
Ubermensch.
consistency with Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, all almost every single one. And they fight crime. They
Mhm.
do it with they're these caped crusaders. There's some involvement with the media. Like there's all of these parallels, but Superman seems to have been the first.
Yeah.
Now, the biggest difference that I've mentioned before, and again, it's why I love Batman, is Batman has no superpower.
Sure.
In fact, his superpower is what makes him who he is. It's a story, it's a drive, it's a use of his knight privilege, as I talked about it, these things that are handed to him. But Superman, yeah, the prototype. And again, it's if Superman is the prototype, then it makes even more sense why all these characters are so in reference to the normativity of the male.
Mm,
If Superman, as literally a Superman,
yeah.
is the main and first. And maybe there's not an answer.
Yeah.
I just think that I couldn't help but see those parallels as they were relating Batgirl in relation to Robin and Batman.
Yeah. And
So
then,
I love,
does that make Cassandra a derivative of Batgirl and Stephanie a derivative of, or Barbara, I should say, and Stephanie? I don't know. Because
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just nice to give them their own agency rather than like, always compare them to this other person. I just feel
Right.
like,
Which
they're their
I
own
which I
person.
want, but that's
Yeah.
also hard to do when you're literally your name comes from in relation to
Yeah.
Batman,
Yep.
which is another reason why, like your fave, Oracle, it's not Bat Oracle,
Yeah.
it's Oracle. It's this new person with
Mm-hmm.
agency, and she
Yep.
has agency as someone with a disability, which
Yeah.
how rare is that?
Yep.
So, oh, those editors. Put me in
No,
the
our will.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So I love how Carolyn structures it around first, second, and third wave feminism,
Mm-hmm.
and chunks the Batgirl universe into these chunks of years. And I appreciate that she gives it that history. And again, like I said, I think that hers is the least stretched of kind of overlaying a modern political or cultural discourse over what we see in the Batman universe. This is the deepest, and I think the least stretched one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so she begins at Seneca Falls in New York with Declaration
Yep.
of Sentiments and Resolutions. And keep in mind, I really wanted to make sure we mention this. Like, Frederick Douglass was at that convention, and because he saw a parallel between the rights of former slaves and with women.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, if women rights are human rights, then women rights are slave rights or former slave rights as well. And so he saw an overlap that was there. And throw back to our first essay, the Declaration of Sentiments and Resolutions is modeled on the Declaration of Independence. All men and women are created equal.
Yeah.
And so it expressly names women, even though men, was often a term that meant humankind.
Right.
Effectively, all men were created equal. In practice, applied to males,
Mm-hmm.
which is why women wanted to put in the and women piece. And so I love that the story, I love that it starts there. It roots it in that moment of history, and boom, there's this genesis of Batgirl in reference to that first wave of feminism, and enter Betty.
Yep. Do you want to show your book now? You want to show your book now?
Oh, yeah.
Don't forget it.
Mystique by Betty.
There it is.
Yeah. So this book, it changed the world, or at least it changed America as a country. And so it comes out in 1963, and I want to read just the beginning of this. I mean, so the book is mentioned here, and so it's on. Oh, now where is it? It's within
199.
There it is, 199 at the
Second
top, because this is in part what kicks off, you could argue, it helps kick off second wave feminism, was this book coming out, The Feminine Mystique. I mean, the start of the chapter is the problem that has no name. And here's how it begins. The problem, so like dramatically and poetically, the problem lay buried, unspoken for many years in the minds of American women. It was a strange stirring, a sense of dissatisfaction, a yearning that women suffered in the middle of the 20th century in the United States. Each suburban wife struggled with it alone. As she made the beds, shopped for groceries, matched slipcover material, ate peanut butter sandwiches with her children, chauffeured Cub Scouts and brownies, lay beside her husband at night because in the 60s, all you did was lay and nothing else. I added that. She was afraid to ask, even of herself, the silent question, is this all? I mean, I'm asking that question the more that I learn about Betty. Is this all? Is this all that Batman can do? Where Robin says, not bad for a girl. And then enter in Barbara. And indeed, thankfully, this was not all under Betty that Batgirl could do. We get Barbara coming in as this new, unique thing. But I love that Carolyn is realistic and that she recognizes that a lot of what the feminist movement focused on were specifically the concerns of white women, and that Barbara, while progressive in a lot of ways, was still white, middle class, and non-queer. And so it was an incremental step forward of pushing the envelope of what was there.
I don't know if you could do like more than that, at that time period.
Right.
I think we have that freedom now for sure. And I think Cassandra Cain, that you read about in, I guess it would have been wave 3, pushes that even farther. Like, finally we have a person of color as Batgirl. And then later on we have Nyssa, of course. Yeah. So we're starting, to get a bit better.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, and I asked her this too, do you feel like we are in a fourth wave? Do you feel like there will be another wave, and what that might look like, or how female comic characters in general, or maybe even a Batgirl might look in that wave?
I think that, I mean, the easy answer is I don't think we'll know if we're in a wave until 20 plus years from now.
We were in that fourth wave then.
Yeah. I think we can best see it in hindsight. But it does seem like something different is happening here. I mean, even to me, Nyssa is the beginning of a fourth wave. I mean, to enter into someone who is a person of color and for her to often talk about that she criticizes Barbara and the police for ignoring her community. I mean, that to me does not even fit super well within third wave feminism. Like that doesn't sound very 1919s and very 2010s. I mean, that sounds very like 2010s and onward. So I wonder if specifically that racial element is part of what is going to be the fourth wave to really do that justice. And I do think that people of color, that Nissa as a person of color certainly acts as a representative character, but there are such unique concerns specifically for the Black community. I would love to see what would be able to be done and what we could discover and learn from a Batgirl who was specifically Black.
Mm-hmm.
Because those that are Black have such a tragic and such a long history within the United States, and at 13% are such a large portion of the population, and now in 2020 having increased agency and voice in the public square. We need to Black Panther Batgirl, and I would love to see what that could reveal about us as a nation to do the shape and show thing,
Mm-hmm.
and to take it down there. So I wonder if really giving a depth to the racial concerns might be that fourth wave of Batgirl.
Yeah,
I don't know. I haven't read it, but it doesn't seem like Nissa fully does that. But I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't read it either, so I can't speak with any authority on that. I know that there were two Black, there might be more now, characters. One of them was a Robin-esque character named Duke Thomas, and then there was the son of Lucius Fox was Batwing, I think his name was, with New 52. So they were doing that racial thing. Racial thing, that sounded disrespectful. They were bringing race into the Bat family a bit more over with the male characters, but not with the female. I will say, though, I feel like they dipped their toe in the water a bit with the Lego movie, the Batman Lego film, because Rosario Dawson voiced Batgirl, and she was like, it looked like she was in fact Black. So I feel like they had that potential. And I feel like whenever they do the Batgirl live action film, why not cast a Black actress? The only thing I need in my Batgirl is is red hair, which you can do with any person of color.
Jones, it can happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and we've seen that happen before, like with Harry Potter and the Cursed Child with the play. Like the character of Hermione was cast as a Black actress on stage because her character within the book didn't fully necessitate her being white, and it was still faithful to the character to do that. So I'd be really interested to see and excited if they cast a Black woman as Batgirl, but I'd be even more interested if they cast her as a Black woman and actually dealt with those elements of her being Black. Yeah. So that it wasn't just, she could have been white, it could have been Black, could have been anybody, but to really thematically dig into what that means in the way that like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse did of Miles Morales, of
Miles Morales. Michael.
Of Miles Morales being such an other within his culture and a subculture and such of mixed race within his family. Like they dealt with that in a way that did justice to some of the beauty and confusion of racial discourse. He couldn't have been white. It wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
And I would love to see that with
Batgirl. Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like
you do it with her an ability, like, and give her a disability. Like, that's pretty hard. Yeah. So let's try this other thing.
Yeah. And because we know that, I guess, Gotham has different townships, it's easy, I think, because you had Batgirl and Burnside, there's got to be some other place that you could have her helping out a community. That would be great. Yeah. Oy. I do know Batwoman, Ruby Rose was Batwoman in the DC comics, or the DC WBCW, whatever it's called. And then she has quit, and so they've hired a Black actress, but the Black actress is not playing Kate Kane. It's a completely different character, so it's like they recast but not really for her. So it feels like they take a step forward, take a step back, because Black Canary in the recent Birds of Prey film, that was a Black actress. So I don't know. Okay. So you think fourth wave mostly let's bring in race more often. I feel like, and I think Carolyn, when I asked her, she thought that we probably are in the fourth wave, especially with social media, like that's
Mhm.
affecting a lot of things. I wonder to what extent these waves can be more inclusive, because now that we have different genders, and not everyone is cis necessarily, like will there be more inclusion
Mhm.
for like non women, basically non
Yeah,
cisgendered women?
yeah,
um, but
yeah.
yeah, so more
Well,
inclusion, I would
maybe
say, overall.
let's maybe we're not the first to say, but if no one said it, let's be the first to say maybe the fourth wave of feminism started with the Women's March in 2016.
Mm,
Like maybe that was an uprising and a level of inclusivity and a recognition of the necessity of intersectionality within what needs to be a new movement and a new wave.
yeah, let's do it. You heard it here first, folks, from Sam Heath. Started in 2016.
So I love that. I don't love this, but Betty is always, fawning over Rob and
Yes.
wants to date him. But tell me if I thought I remember this. In Batgirl Year One, it is Robin who is all about some Batgirl. And she's like,
Yes.
you are a kid, get away. And I love that reversal, which I know is super conscious on the part of the writers. But I remember that on 200 when I was looking at Barbara is older, has a high level degree, has no romantic interest in Batman or Robin. But Robin has a romantic interest in her.
Yeah. And that was true in the 70s as well, with Batman Family #1, I'm pretty sure, where Robin like kisses. Well, no, that's not true. Robin was smack talking, I think, and Barbara, as Batgirl, grabs him and kisses him, and letters poured in. They're like, why would you do this? Robin is a teenager. Barbara is, a congresswoman, or soon to be. She's at least 25. It's
Mm,
ridiculous.
okay.
But she had no romance. It was just to shut him up, basically.
Mm.
So you are a father. We've mentioned that you are a father of 3 children, 1 girl, 2 boys, right?
2 girls, 1 boy.
2 girls, one
Girl,
boy.
girl, boy, girl.
So, as a father of young ladies,
Mm.
how can you take this essay, or even, well, I guess just take this essay, or what we've been talking about, and how do you get them to engage with different superheroes? Because I had one discussion with your daughter. She asked me a question about Spider Gwen. I know that I think they've read DC superhero girls, right? So, do you talk about different, I guess, representations of superheroes and females and things like that, or have you not gotten there? And what will it look like once you get there?
Yeah. So so far as superheroes, the most we've talked about with them is Miles Morales and Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse. Like genuinely their first intro into superheroes was watching that movie. And we watched it maybe 6 months ago, and we watched it again a few months ago, and they love it. They're our two older. Our oldest daughter is 6 and our son is 3, and they're both out. Our oldest daughter especially are really good movie watchers, and Alan is like me. She's a story buff, so she'll sit and listen to a story. She'll listen to a story on a book on tape. She'll watch a show. She'll watch a movie. Like she loves stories. And Atticus, he's getting there, but he's interested in certain ones. But both of them came into an understanding of what superheroes were by watching Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse. And so which is great, because you see such a variety of what a superhero can be. And of course, Alan very much identified with Spider-Gwen. And so for her, that is her, that has become her standard. Like that's kind of her baseline of what a superhero is. And Atticus is obsessed with Spider-Man. He has only Spider-Man underwear, water bottle, and a Spider-Man shirt. And Alan, for it was for her birthday, got a Spider-Man shirt, and talks about Spider-Gwen as she did with you. So I love that we used that movie, and it wasn't necessarily intentional. I mean, it was intentional that we showed that as a superhero movie because it's one of our favorite ones ever, and it's one that kids their age could really engage. But it's also one that allowed us to open up that conversation about superheroes also being girls or superheroes being women, and for us to say that to Alan. and there are books that we'll read with her, of books that talk about like the importance of being brave and the importance of being strong and the importance of being assertive. A book that we read just tonight is called, it's called A Girl Like You, and it was saying, uh, make your feelings known. And which our daughter has zero trouble ever doing that. And also the book was nuanced enough to say, don't, I don't know how it phrased it. You know the Amy Schumer skit of the I'm sorry skit, where they make fun of the some difficulty that women have of apologizing often,
Sure.
of in that just being a default expression. The book, The Girl Like You, it's a children's book. It even said something like, and don't apologize when you don't need to. So it's subtle things like that that have created conversations where we're trying to kind of hone in her mind what it means to be a girl, and to show her someone like Spider-Gwen who is capable and who is in her own universe and is not in direct reference even to Spider-Man. You know, our daughter doesn't get any of that, but it's created in her imagination a place where the first superhero she's not engaging isn't Superman, which I feel like, you know, for the golden age of comics was where a lot of people began.
Sure. Do you feel like comics then do a better job than maybe Disney princesses to show that representation and the agency and everything? Because
Yeah,
Disney
well,
princesses come far, so it's not like we're back to Sleeping Beauty and
right. We've got Tiana and Jasmine to at least have some representation of other cultures and people of color. But uh, Disney Disney so often to me feels like it's in response to what culture wants. What I'm reading here from Carolyn is in at some points within the story and history of Batgirl, she's driving the conversation and not just in response to what culture is. And so it seems like, I mean, within the comic world, you're able to do things, but unfortunately, you're able to backtrack on them as they did with Oracle, and you can more easily undo them. So
mm.
it's a double-edged sword.
A couple times Carolyn mentions readership, readers, fans, etc. How much influence do you think a fan should have on the shape and show of an art piece?
It depends on what it is that the artist wants to do. I mean, if the artist is wanting to primarily shape something that the artist desires and show something that the artist desires, and the fan and the readers come in and overtake that, and that artist feels beholden, that doesn't seem like a fair arrangement. If it's that the fans are excited and supportive of maybe something that's already going on, that and it's, you know, affirming or helps the artist deepen that or more excitedly do it, that seems okay. I don't want fans to subvert something that's there. And after reading this essay, I really don't want the editors to subvert the things that are going on within
Yeah.
it, that are good and helpful and broad. So
Yeah.
I want readers to have a role, but I
Mhm.
don't want them to subvert or distract from what it is that the artist might want to do. But
Mhm.
then again, I don't want an artist to think so narrowly that the artist is only wanting to do one thing. I mean, you know, what modern artist, what modern painter ever painted something and said, "I'm only saying this one thing"? You know, they want you to go before it and have an experience, whatever that is. You know, so some balance of those things seems to be a good place for the role of fans and the intent of the artist.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, to find fandom is so strange. It's
Mhm.
fickle. It has such power. I feel like, as a fan currently that's really dissatisfied where Batgirl is, like what I have to say, editors should actually be listening to me because I actually feel like I know better than they do.
Yeah.
But then there are sort of the negative backlash. And this is, she talked about the positive aspect that, people had problems with Steph at the end of War Games and like, look what you did to her. And so they brought her back, that sort of thing. But
Mhm.
then, I think about this isn't the Star Wars, but Carolyn would approve since she's a Star Wars fan. And you've seen the most recent trilogy, right?
Mhm.
Rose Tico, and just that backlash for the people going after the actress, and
Right.
then to the creators bowed to the fans, and then like her well, she was just brought way back her runtime in the third of the three. story. So there's that negative result
Yeah.
too. So there's got to be, a sweet spot, but it's just hard to tell, like, when do we listen to them? When do we not listen to them?
Well, I'm glad that George Lucas listened to the fans about Jar Jar Binks. So that was,
Oh no, he's
oh
one of my
yeah.
favorites.
Oh, Misa no like him. No, no, not.
Yikes. Okay,
Oh
whatever
my
you
God.
say.
Can we talk
Um,
about the tights incident on 200?
we can
You
talk
mentioned,
about it. Let me see if I can pull up an image
you mentioned it. Oh yeah, yeah. So you
so
mentioned
you
it
can see the
earlier.
effect.
So Batman praises her. You see, Batgirl, that was one time where you turned a feminine trait to your advantage. Barbara thinks, I just didn't have the heart to tell Batman that I tore my tights deliberately to give me an excuse for showing off my legs and distracting those crooks.
That's true.
This was such a layered, or maybe it's more simple, conversation that one, this couldn't happen now. Like that would, like the world would implode if that happened now. But one, it's so interesting that it was still, she is still using her sex appeal and her sexuality. She's objectifying her own body in order to be able to do something. But the wink wink joke is not that. The wink wink joke is, oh, at least I did it knowingly. You know, at least I was aware of doing that, but I was still playing off of these male expectations.
Here's the cover. Oh man,
Okay, there it is.
you can see the run in the tights,
Get that
and it doesn't really. Why won't you focus? She says, well, Batman says, Batgirl, get over here. Help us. We've got a problem. And she says, I have a bigger one. A run in my tights.
right?
Yeah.
So like it's meant to be, a commentary on female expectations and all of that, but yet the commentary falls through because it doesn't recognize like what she's doing is a little dehumanizing.
And let me show you. So that was 68, maybe. Well, no. What am I thinking? Well, maybe 68. And let's look at this image of.
Oh boy.
Oh, this is a good one. Of a more recent person
Yeah. So
who
there
does that. She does it purposefully to, like, distract people.
there you
Um,
yeah. I mean, so
yeah,
so so I feel like the two views of this would be one that I've kind of expressed, like, oh my goodness, like this is like objectifying your own body. This is
yeah,
not okay. This is dehumanizing. And the other view is, well, I'm so comfortable and I'm so in charge, and it's my body that I'm able to do this.
yeah,
And that what forget about the expectations that are there. I'm able to do this because I have agency, and my body is mine.
yeah.
And so I feel like in today's world, I could hear both of those reactions to that incident.
Yeah. And for our listeners, I just showed him an image of Power Girl. Yeah, this was a question that came up because I talk about it in the thesis that I wrote and I presented, and someone asked, like, you said this, and what do you mean about that? And I felt like I didn't explain myself well, because I do think there is something positive about being like, this is my body. And also, um, it almost is a commentary on men as well as being like really visual creatures, and almost like a slave maybe to the monkey brain or the lizard brain, that,
Yeah.
hey, ho ho ho, she's got to run in her tights and I'm super distracted now. So there's that as well. But she uses, what I liked about that, because it's actually a terrible issue, but if I were to find any sort of positive out of it, it's that she takes what is perceived as a weakness and
Mm.
turns it on its head and uses it as a strength.
Which
um
Batman praises her for.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, that's just it's, I mean, overall it's very much a sign of the times in the 60s.
Yeah.
But I feel like with Barbara, I she's just an inventive person. I think people use her femininity against her. They often just they don't expect much from her, but what I love about her is that she's able to subvert those expectations and go above what anyone would expect her to do, and usually take it out on the people who thought misjudged her, basically.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. Okay.
I guess my last, I just have two words, Batman's role, which this is a problem with me sometimes where I just have notes and who knows what I meant at the time. But I guess with Carolyn's essay here, Batgirl certainly is making commentary as well as pushing things forward. Is Batman, should Batman also have that role of pushing forward positive ideas, or is he always the one that's sort of stagnant and he stays pretty specifically with the times, and so Barbara or whoever is wearing the cowl at the time has to go against him?
So you're asking, should that be? I mean,
Should it be? Is it?
what from what I see of Batman, he's real consistent. I mean, in Black Mirror, he uses cooler technology and can 3D image the killer whale and do all those
Sounds
awesome things. So
ridiculous.
there's
Yeah.
so there's that reflection of culture, but Batman himself is incredibly, incredibly consistent in motive and method. I mean, even though the technology changes, what he does with it is still he harnesses fear and he harnesses expectations and uses those against people. No wonder he praised Betty for doing that, because that's the very same thing that he does. He takes people's expectations about a bat and he uses those for his own advantage. So I I think that Batman, if he got too pop culture-y and referencey and political, like it would distract from that, as you said, that stagnant, not in a negative way, but maybe that consistent piece that he provides, where other things, Scarecrow, Joker, Batgirl, can be in relation to him and reflecting or shaping and showing the times. It seems like it helps to have Batman stay at that level. I wonder if he's broken out of that at times.
Yeah, it's interesting. There was a word that, or two words that were passed around at the Bowling Green State University, and I can't remember now what it was. What it was. I mean, it was basically toxic masculinity, but it had a better term to it. But I mean, is he almost like a symbol of white male entitlement? Like, these are the way things have been and always will be. And if he goes outside of that, people are going to freak out because no, that's outside of my comfort zone. And that's what happens, with like video games and things where, oh, they're trying to push the envelope. I don't like that because, my entitlement. I don't know. Is that who Batman is? And that he's like the comfort zone. Let's not get out of the comfort zone. If you want comfort zone or out of it, go to another character like Barbara who will push the envelope. But Batman's my idea.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, to fiddle with Batman is to fiddle with more than just the story. I think you're right to tie it to him functioning as a representation of identity, and whether that's male or white male or some combination or some other piece, there's something consistent that's there. But yet I do appreciate, at least in the Batman universe, those other supporting characters are able to do so many of those other things. And again, I don't think a lot of those characters could do all those things if Batman also was bouncing around and revealing things and reflecting the culture too much. I think that it would minimize, I think, those other characters. I mean, in a sense, those other characters are able to be at the depth that they are because Batman has a consistency. So I don't know if it's a negative thing that he serves that role.
Yeah. Well, remember, you did say Donald Trump is Batman, so.
There's some Batman-like tendon.
Yeah. My ratings are going to plummet with this episode.
Skyrocket.
Or skyrocket, yeah. Any other thoughts or notes on this particular one?
The last thing that I had highlighted was on 208. And it's right in the very middle of the page. Here, Barbara is essentially mentoring two younger versions of herself, a new Batgirl and a new Oracle, such that Barbara does not have to represent all women as she did in the 60s, or even all women with disabilities. However, most of the stories with Stephanie as Batgirl feature almost entirely white and heterosexual casts. And then it goes on to the future Batgirl of Nyssa.
Mm-hmm.
So in the fact that she even calls her the future Batgirl makes me wonder if we're bouncing into that fourth wave without her saying that or having to commit to it.
Well, we're not there now. I mean, I don't know what the Batman Beyond comic is currently doing. I don't know what Nissa, because she says reappears in 2017, and this book was published in 2019, and but just with current status of Barbara and her book, like we're back in the third wave for sure, if we were in a fourth one. So that's the problem.
Which is sad that culturally we might be in this fourth wave, but Batman universe wise, we've taken a step back.
Yep. And I don't know how to fix that. I think editorial is part of it. One of the tweets, because I mentioned the writer that left had tweeted, she said, if a man in charge says, I support women, you need to look around to see if there are actually any women around that he's supporting, which I thought was really interesting. But it's going to come down to editors and what they allow for their writers to do with these particular characters. But we had in the scheme of this Batgirl run, the current one that's going, we had a disabled black, I think she was, well, I'll just say queer so we can do like the blanket term. And then we had a transgender character at one point who was also a person of color. I think she was Asian. And so they're like, with this current run that we're on, like the past 6 or so issues, like, where are they? And they were name dropped in 47. And I laughed and I was like, wow, you do remember who they are. But, and I can't tell, is that the writer not using them? Are they being told you can't use them because they're in like actually a different, Barbara was forced to go back to Gotham City and leave Burnside. So it really is, unfortunately, there are just so many men up top and just really at DC in general. I remember seeing a panel or an image of a panel from Comic-Con, maybe it was as early as last year, and it was like a Batman panel, and I took a screenshot and sent it to Carolyn and said, what's wrong with this picture? And I think there was either 1 or 2 women on the panel and everyone else was a white male. So the readership, I think, is really diverse, but the writers are not really diverse, and editorial, I think, is not diverse, and so that is being reflected, I think, in the storytelling, unfortunately. So we push forward and then we're like taking steps back for whatever reason.
Okay.
It's a sad time.
Yeah. Well, the good news is that, I mean, to go back to the very beginning of the podcast, like with our founding documents,
oh
the
yes,
Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, we have not done what they've called for, but yet the structure is there for us to do it. And same thing with Batgirl, not just Batgirl, with the whole Batman universe. Like the structure is there to be able to fulfill these things and these roles and these groups and bring others in and to speak to things and to speak to people and to speak for people to a degree. It's the tools are there. Whether we decide to engage them or not is hopefully not only up to the editors. hopefully fandom will have a role here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's been a sad time for me as a fan. So I mean, we can only hope. But this is, it's fun to reflect on good times. So, well, anything else on Carolyn's essay?
No, it's brilliant though.
Okay. So now we are just going to give our overall thoughts on the collection, or, what you have read. My 2 questions for you would be, would you recommend this of what you have read? And would this be helpful in a senior thesis seminar of, which you have taught? I don't know if you're doing that this year or not.
To be used in what sense?
Like to give an example of a successful thesis or an unsuccessful one potentially.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely would recommend it. The way that I could see this being most helpful is because most people are not going to read a whole book on politics in Gotham, and both because most are not going to have an understanding of the Batman
Yeah.
universe
Yep.
to really engage it. I mean, and I only do to a certain degree, and I feel like I'm more invested in graphic novels more than the average person, and I'm still not all in, and not at a Stella level. So I feel this would be most helpful. I would love to be able to say, hey, read this certain essay, or hey, oh, I see this would really apply. So I could see pieces of this being very, very recommendable. And could I use it within a senior thesis class? Absolutely. And the one that I think that's the most succinct and clearly argued is the Scarecrow one. I mean, to talk about Scarecrow preying on personal and political fears and then using those to achieve what he wants. Like that is a concise, power-packed thesis. And this isn't a criticism, but in half the pages that Carolyn did, that person dives in to that. Now that's a narrower project than Carolyn had, but an essay like that, it's tight, it's clear, and it's incredibly well researched, and it's well argued. So yeah, like rhetorically, there were some amazing things happening within the four that I read.
Yeah, for sure. I would recommend it. I thought that it was really good. I was nervous. Some of them I thought, oh no, what's this going to be like? But it turned out to be okay. Some critiques I have, because hey, it was a review copy. I think I have that freedom. I had some Nolan fatigue for sure. There were at least, I think there were four. There were four essays based off of the Nolan films, which um well, I guess I'll round out my critique. The other critique, I'll just say that the Nolan fatigue. What about other incarnations of Batman? I mean, you had Nolan, BVS. They talked about the comics, of course. A little bit more on the animated series, or just dive or more video games, just to have it more well rounded. There were three women writers and only one essay about women. So that was a bit disappointing. And I at first was going to blame my editor, Picariello. But then when I asked, the call for it was a blind submission, really, as far as I can tell. And so I think he just probably processed through which ones were the best and went for it. So I don't know if I can really blame him for the makeup of all these men and then all of this Nolan kind of stuff. It was just how it happened. But, for me, I'd love to have more essays by women and about women would be great to trace it. But alas. So, but overall, yeah, I would totally recommend this.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for being on. How'd your maiden voyage feel?
I've made it through. We did not hit the iceberg, so
Gosh.
it was quite the journey.
Yep.
This is quite the runtime for a podcast.
Boy. Yeah.
And this book it's so much more accessible than I anticipated. Again, as a huge fan of Batman, but not somebody who's read a ton of stuff, like it gives you often the background that you need to be able to engage it. And then the things that I didn't know, I had you here to help me with. So
Yep.
it was a great ride.
So glad. Where can listeners and viewers find and support you?
Oh yeah. So I write articles for the website Medium. And I'm on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Sam Allen Heath is the full handle for Instagram. And those articles are primarily deal with looking at life through the intersection of, and I'll use one of your favorite words, but looking at the intersection of race, politics, and empathy, and a call
Empathy.
for that. Yeah, yeah. I'm wanting to try and articulate a third way of how do we engage in a racial discourse? How do we recognize pieces of our culture and of our history and move into acknowledging those and move into a different era? So I write there. My Instagram account, I put the articles on, but also put any books that I read. It transitioned over from those artsy photos with the filters that aren't allowed anymore into really just the books that I read
Yeah.
and the articles that I write maybe a few years ago.
Man. And some of those articles have like such a controversial headline. Like the last, what you have many, but I remember one of them is like, I killed
George Floyd.
Yes. I was like, well, I mean, there's a hook if ever there were one, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I had one comment on that article that said, I killed George Floyd,
Yeah.
and do us all a favor and turn yourself in. So
Yikes.
that was an intense one. But no, it's about what whiteness is and white culture, and how that played a role in George Floyd's death. And speaking of that in first person terms. But yes, some of them have some controversial titles.
They sure do, yeah. I keep tagging Donovan on a lot of them. I don't know if he's ever read any, but I told him that you and he would get along well and have good discussions.
Oh, great.
Though he's a big fan of Coates, which I know you're moderately. I'm down on Coates, but I just recently watched something with Ibram X. Kendi, and I'm like, that's the guy that I want right there. He's got some hope and actual positive things that things could be better.
Well, Coates is at least really intellectually honest, and he'll say, listen, I'm an atheist, and I want to scream at the waves, and I want to diagnose, but I don't fully have a solution. And Kendi is all about the solution.
Yeah.
And Kendi would take great issue with many of the things we said about race tonight. He's articulating a very narrow, not in a negative sense, but a very narrow yet nuanced view of race. I've read his book Stamped from the Beginning, and my wife is reading with her book club, and I'm going to read it soon, his How to Be an Anti-Racist. And it is the way to be an anti-racist is a very specific thing for him. So he is speaking the things.
Are you going to read the children's guide to being an anti-racist? Because he made a children's book too.
I may or may not today have gone by with my kids in a downpour to pick up Anti-Racist Baby by Ibram X. Kendi, and it's sitting on our counter upstairs right now.
There you go.
Our kids get a new birthday book. It's we buy a ton of used books and all that, but a new book we get once a year at a local shop in town at New Dominion Bookshop, and they're closed because of COVID, and you can't browse. But I found 3 books online, and I would always pull 3 from the shelves and let them choose. And Wendell, our 16-month-old, I didn't let her choose. So the one I chose for her was Anti-Racist Baby. So I flipped through it about 7 hours ago when it was dinner time, and I'm going to go back and actually read the full thing tomorrow. So yeah, we got it.
There it is. You got it. Well, remember, you can send any questions or comments to batgirltheoracle@gmail.com. Do you have an email that you would like to give to people, or do you just want me to forward you if I get anything for you?
No, I'd be happy to. So Sam Heath, my name, SAMHEATH, and the number 4@gmail.com.
Okay, so if you've got any complaints,
thoughts,
they're going to send you a bunch of Trump memes, probably. You can find the show on Google Play and Stitcher, and also now you can subscribe on YouTube, like the show on Facebook, or follow it on Twitter at Batgirl the Oracle, and follow the Batman Universe on Facebook and Twitter as well. Support the Batman Universe by subscribing to Patreon. And once again, thanks to Mile High Comics for sponsoring Batgirl the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast. Did you see what my tagline is?
No.
Okay, my tagline is "Fly on, Babs Lovers," and I will give you that opportunity. So I will say, and until next time, and then you say it. Okay, so that's your gift from me. Okay, next time will actually be with Carol and Coca, which is great. So until next time,
fly on, Babs Lovers.
Great. And